The white light, it elevates the person physically, spiritually, and every other way. And also, it physically purifies the person because you have to be super clean in like thought and body before you can even come close to meeting God or merging with Him.
So, hi, Soul Family, and welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Haji, and this is Amazing NDE Stories. Our guest today is Eugene Braxton. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Eugene Braxton. Okay. Welcome, Eugene, to the show.
Thanks, Haji. Thanks for having me. Can you
Perfect.
hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
Eugene,
good.
jump straight in and tell us about your amazing NDE.
Okay. In fact, speaking about jumping straight in, that's where it started, where I jumped into a lake feet first and got stuck in the muck of the lake where I was swimming at with some friends. Um, my story actually fully starts when I was younger. I had psychic experiences as a kid, um, a lot of them, especially the inner ones, like out of body experiences, dreams, dream control, lucid dreams, nightmares, falling dreams, uh, and then other things too, like hearing voices, hearing someone calling my name, turning around, there's no one there. So, and the audio is the supposedly the first thing that activates, like in the psychic person. You may hear music or dreams or words as you're going to sleep. You may hear it when you're awake. So I began around the age of 6 with the out of bodies and all the inner experiences. And that continued heavily till the age of 16. I still have them, but not like them in the teen years. Uh, so with the dreams and out of bodies, I was able to understand the different levels of consciousness that a person goes through when they have these inner experiences. And because they were piled on top of each other, like I would have an out of body, then a dream, then a falling dream, then a nightmare, then a paralyzation, and that's a part and parcel of the that whole inner experience too. So that's what got me started. I'll explain later as we go along. But by the time I was 13, I had had at least 12,000 out of body experiences, usually about 6 a night. Yeah. And just like when I was telling you about the insomnia, usually a person who's psychic will have uh, sleep disorders. That's super normal. They may come in different forms, like a bad dreams, oversleeping or undersleeping, which has some interesting side effects. When you oversleep or undersleep, you can get really into the psychic flow that way, as long as you're in fully good health and fully mentally balanced. Um, but so the inner experiences at night, I began to master, and the paralyzation is in there too. It's like everything is connected, and everything on that psychic path is also connected. Like the dreams will lead a person to lucid dreams. The lucid dreams will then lead a person to out of bodies, and you can get to an out of body from a lucid dream. The out of bodies will lead the person in, and by that time you're kind of pretty well versed in the nighttime activities. And it always starts with the inner experiences. The out of bodies will then lead to the person becoming occurrence prone, where they begin to have psychic experiences in the daytime and at night. So you begin to be psychic 24/7. That's a cool thing. The occurrence prone thing can be a little scary because you're having a lot of heavy psychic things coming at you all at once. A lot of people have had them, and that shows that you're on the right path. And you just kind of have to ride them out of the psychic, the occurrence prone experiences. But so it all leads to, they're all rooms of God's paranormal mansion. Dreams leads to lucid dreams, dream control. leads to the out of bodies, um, not to mention the falling and flying dreams. And from a falling and flying dream, you can wake up and wake into an out of body. Like I had a dream once where I was falling, and this was a repeating dream that I had had over and over. So about like on the 60th night, I recognized it was that same dream. So I let myself fall. And once I did, without fear, I started to float. So I wondered if I could fly. And as soon as I said fly, I started flying. But I got so excited that I popped awake back in my bed. And in those realms, in those dimensions, in those inner experiences, the person wants to have full emotional and mental control where you're uh, uh, disciplined in controlling your thoughts and emotions. And in a lot of times in those realms, whether it be dreams or out of bodies, um, the person wants to have like a Mr. Spock like demeanor where you're fully observing but not reacting to it. You're almost letting the experience happen, where you're not interacting with it, you're interfacing with it. Mm-hmm. Because it's a lot of interesting things that happen there that you go through, that you turn into and that you see and interface with. Um, I had some things that I interfaced with in the near death. And when you interface with something, you become one with it. And here's a quote from the book I wrote about the near death that highly focused concentration combined with advanced meditation produces a merging into things where one becomes one with one's object of focus. And you start to merge into what you're fully concentrating on, where you become one with it and you understand it 360 degrees inside out, whether it be a person, place, or thing. So the out of bodies led to daytime psychic experiences. So at age 16, I had asked for these experiences to happen at age 9. I knew there was an invisible world, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I asked God, if you show me all these things that I can't see, I'll always tell people about you. And that was at 9. When I was 11, they started super heavy. And but they had been happening since age 6. But at 11, I was a little bit more emotionally stable to deal with those things. Because it's pretty freaky when you're paralyzed and can't move, or you find yourself floating up off the bed and you turn around and you see yourself down there. Without turning around, you just kind of look behind your head. You have that 360-degree spherical consciousness where you can see everything in time or space. And that's like an indication that you're partially in the spirit world. That paralyzation is an interesting thing. We'll talk about that too. So after all these years of the out of bodies, the dreams, the future dreams, all of that, prophetic dreams, I had the near death. And I had it at age 14. The near death is a spiritual out of body, where an atheist can have a regular out of body, but he'll be kind of limited to this lower earth plane. But in the spiritual out of body, and you can have a dream, a spiritual dream that can be equal in side effects to a near death, if you really want to. But the near death is spiritual out of body, and it involves God. Where the atheist out of body, he may just find himself floating around empty streets at night, going down a neighborhood. But the spiritual out of body, which is the near death, takes you high into those upper invisible realms or dimensional planes. And as the person progresses in their study of dreams, controlling the emotions and learning about the out of bodies, and the dreams will naturally and softly lead you into out of bodies, whether you like it or not, if you do the breeze. Also, at the same time, the student of this like esoteric study or research will begin to be naturally inclined to do, along with the breathing meditations, You'll have them first, and then the student will then be inclined to begin regular fasting. And that will super increase all of your psychic abilities and all of your progress to getting to that higher level. So I was a student. 14, I have the near death. And you kind of don't have nothing in those experiences that you're not really ready for. I had thought about like what death would be like, but when you're 14, you don't really consider it too much. The paralyzations that I had was the closest thing, and the out of bodies that would approximate death. Because there is an interesting thing in the paralyzation is like a signpost that you're about to have an out of body. And a lot of times, the tighter you struggle, the tighter it'll grip you. You have to literally surrender and allow it to paralyze you. And the breathing, the deep breathing exercises that we'll talk about too, will keep you dimly awake where you can foggily see what's happening. And if you continue those breathing exercises and you can get into a dream like that, you can literally walk from lying asleep. You can literally walk into the dream where you're half awake and half asleep. And the breathings will pull you through or carry you into that dream or out of body experience. So you definitely have to do the breathing exercises, the deep breathing, so much that you naturally do them, especially when you lay down to go to sleep. You want to do them before you go to bed and then after you get up. They'll increase your psychic capacity and psychic abilities, and they'll push you into that realm where the dreams, out of bodies, and other things, a lot of other things happen. And so I'm 14. I have the near death. I'm with a church youth group from our church. A lot of kids from the high school that we went to, junior high, were there. So I jump off a lake, and Haji, I used to be a swimmer. I used to do all the sports, but I swam, competitive swimming, and water polo too, as well as the lakes and dams and waterfalls in Ohio. So we could easily swim. And I jump in feet first, go all the way down like a diver or a basketball player had jumped I went straight down and got stuck in the muck of the cold lake up to my knee. And another black track star had also died in that same lake like 3 years earlier. So I got stuck up to the knee, could not get out, and slowly drowned. And because of the earlier dream experiences and being able to recognize and deal with the dimming of consciousness, that helped me understand what was happening and to kind of roll with it. I got stuck in the muck. I couldn't get out. I sucked in all the lake water, and then I floated, like you see in the movies if the person has his hands out. I floated like that full, and then I fell down on the side. And when I hit the bottom of the lake, the soot came up and covered me like a cold death blanket. I was fully shivering, but couldn't move. The paralyzation had already started. And it always starts, in the esoteric way, from the feet up. Even if you don't realize it, even if you think it starts at your stomach, it always starts at the feet and goes up. And with those breathings and that concentrated focus, but with the breathing, you can literally feel it like a spider web slowly going up your legs. And the breathings is the only thing that keeps you vaguely awake. You're on the borderline of consciousness, where you're more asleep than awake, but you are partially awake. And the breathing is what can carry you over into that next level of consciousness or dimensional realm, and carry you where you can consciously remember it. And there are no lapses of consciousness. You have a continuity of consciousness where the consciousness continues, just like in a dream, with the breathings, with deep breathings and a little silver or some quartz under your pillow. You can remember every part of your dream. especially if you wake up in the right way. So there's a lot to learn about all these things, and they're super good to learn about and study and know because they help you in the real world too, in a lot of ways. So anyway, I'm in the lake. There begins the struggle for life or death, where I'm trying to still get out, waiting for someone to come down and get me, uh, full with air, not breathing anymore, but still awake. Uh, the struggle for life or death did end, and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to get out of this. And that's when the primal fear came in, when the person realizes that they're not going to make it, they are going to die. And I could feel the organs shutting off. And I automatically knew because I was semi in that other dimensional realm. I was half in that other dimensional realm. And in the death state, you'll have like a dream like consciousness, not an out of body, which is a lot clearer, but a dream like where you're only, it's more clearer. The death state level of consciousness is more clearer than dream consciousness, but not as super clear as the out of body or the near death. So, when time slows down and alters, that's a sign that you're in another dimension or you're going to split into another dimension. Like when a person passes out, time seems to slow down or speed up. And when a football player gets hit right before the moment of impact, it slows down, or in a car crash, or anything like that. So, so the struggle for life or death, I watched the organs slowly fade, and I knew automatically that's the liver, that's the kidney, even though I was 14 and didn't really know anatomy. But I could feel each one softly shutting off. And then with that surrender, I began to acknowledge that I was going to die. And I was paralyzed up, from the neck down. I couldn't move, really from the head down, because I could see but couldn't move my eyes. And I could hear, and the heart was beating, although it was beating slower and slower each 15 seconds. And I knew soon that it would stop. When I did surrender to that struggle of life or death, there was a sudden peace and warmth. I went from shivering to suddenly being able to breathe again, cosmically. And I was warm, and I knew that somehow it would be all right. That there was, even if I did die, that it would be okay. And there was a nice peacefulness in surrender. No one ever wants to die, but when you go beyond that point where you know you're going to die, and you let go to die, that's an interesting thing. So a super warm, velvety glow of cozy comfort, and you know that everything's going to be all right. The eyes are working, and the heart is still beating slower and slower, and you're just frozen there. Then suddenly, there was a loud boom. At the same time as that boom, everything went black, and there was a length of time that I was encased in a velvety, what a human might see as a velvety coffin. It was more than a coffin, but there's in between that transition between life and death and life after death. The person, here's what happens right at the moment of death. When the blackness comes, what the person goes into is a dark void. It's a dark void of soundless unconsciousness, where you are aware, but you can't see anything and you can't hear anything. Usually, you can't hear anything. It's just all black. It would be like an eternal coma. But what is really happening, and you can verify it because of the dreams and out of body, that paralyzation that you feel as you're dying, and that occurs before you fully, permanently die, that immobilizes the physical body so that the spirit body, just like it happens twice a night when you go to sleep, comes up out of the physical in the same position, comes up out of the physical, uh, stands itself upright near the end of the bed or at the side of the bed. And if you lean slowly away from the bed, you can break free. There's a magnetic pull that, because the survival of the physical body is the main thing. And when the spirit body comes out, the physical body always wants that energy back in. So there's a electromagnetic pull that tries to pull you back into your body. And if you get too close, you will be snapped back and you'll wake up in your body looking at the ceiling. But if you lean slowly, once you're out of your body, you can stretch. It's like like a rubbery like feeling, but you can slowly pull away from it. Even if you're a grandmother, all you have to do is lean sideways. Then once you're about 5 or 6 feet away, near the end of the bed, then you're free. If you get close to the bed, it'll pull you back in. But once you get near the end of the bed where you can stand up, you can lean and pull away. Then you're kind of free to go through a wall, float up through the ceiling, or really go or do anything you want in that astral realm. And with the dreams and out of bodies and lucid dreams, you get used to the dream realm, the astral realm, and then that high spiritual realm where the near deaths, the UFOs, and all that other stuff happens. Remote viewing, communicating with God, like when we pray, that goes to that third spiritual level. But when the person dies, they're paralyzed, and it takes between 15 to 22 seconds for the person to regain consciousness after death. The same amount of time it takes for a person to come out of their body during an out of body and wake back up outside of their room, across the street, or on the roof. That's the length of time between death and reconsciousness after death. I worked with 3 scientists. 2 were near-death world authorities. One was the Dr. Grayson, kind of like the Baron Frankenstein of near-death. He's the dean of near-death research. He asked me to, he heard about my near-death. I wrote him. I saw him in a Newsweek article talking about near-death. He seemed to really believe it. This was in the 96. So he said, if anyone has had a near-death or any psychic experiences, write him and tell him. So I did. And I asked some friends to write too, who had psychic experiences, some Spanish and Black friends, and some white friends. No one else did. I was the only one. And then I forgot about it. A month later, he wrote me back. And so I got into research with him for 97 to 3 years. And then I switched over to Dr. P.M.H. Atwater, a lady scientist, who had had 3 near deaths and was more, knew exactly what I was going through as a fellow near-death experience. We could talk the same talk and we understood what out of bodies was, as opposed to just studying it, although Grayson was really good too. They both are. But she was more easier to work with. And I switched on to her, she had a deeper understanding. The things that I knew about the out of body was really beyond his scope. And she understood better. She was a better fit. So I studied with him. At the same time, I was working with a UFO world authority who worked with me at Temple University. He worked with me in the history department. I worked with the Temple Police. And I studied with him for 12 years, one-on-one in his office after work, and sometimes during work, but usually after work, winter and summer. So he learned a lot from me, and I learned a lot from him. At this time, I was turning from a heavy psychic into a mystic. And the difference between a psychic and a mystic is that the psychic has limited abilities that he neither understands nor controls. The mystic has experienced all of the main paranormal things: haunted house, UFOs, near death, out of bodies, dreams, remote viewing, remote hypnosis, and can do them at will. And also the mystic is more fully focused on God. That's his primary concern, to get to God and to merge with God, to have a conscious union, one-on-one union with the Creator who has created us. This has something to do with the near death, and with all of these experiences, and with in the near death and in other experiences, especially near death and UFOs, you'll see that there's a level of primal ecstasy and a level of primal fear. Like in the near death primal fear, when at the moment of death, when you're struggling to stay alive, in the UFO with the abductions. And there's also primal ecstasy in both too. So there were a few different reasons why I worked with the near death scientists and the UFO scientists. Um, so getting back to so that's the primary reason for that darkness. The person is literally transforming from physical to spiritual body, and you wake up between 15 and 22 seconds after permanent death. With me, I blacked out, and then suddenly and softly, I pop awake again. Like you may have a spontaneous out of body where you're sleeping, and then you suddenly pop somewhere out of body form, above a rooftop or walking down the street invisibly. I suddenly, after death, 15 to 22 seconds, pop awake. I realize that I'm somewhere in space and time because I'm thinking, like I think, therefore I am. I was thinking, so I knew I was alive somewhere. I didn't know what time it was. I realized I was in space, some dimensional realm, a locational place. I didn't know what time it was until I looked down and saw my dead body and still stuck in the knee, still stuck up to the knee. And I realized that I had just died, yet I was still alive. So I was super glad. The person will be super elated. And in the near death, there's a high level of primal ecstasy. It's God filled, it's spiritual filled, and it's divinely oriented, where you're going to higher and higher levels of bliss, ecstasy, and nirvana. There was reconsciousness after death, then the realization of time and space. I realized that I existed somewhere in space and time, saw my dead body, realized that it was the time of death and that I was in that invisible dimensional realm that's neither heaven nor earth. It's not the earth, it's not heaven, it's the afterlife of earth. It's the afterlife. And it's the place where people have out of bodies go. It's also like it can be like a training ground. It's not the dream world. It's the afterlife, the place you go to, and you'll see what I mean, before you get to heaven. And that's where the pre-training as a human helps with the breathings, the meditations, the sharper memory, the cleaner body with the fastings, and then the knowledge of studying and reading about those things as you go along. So realization of time and space, I realized that I was alive. I was super glad. And I was looking around. I was in spirit body form. And Haji, when I woke up in a gyroscope, inside of a gyroscope, that disintegrated as my spirit body rematerialized in invisible, in an invisible solid body form. So I was invisible, but solid. And I could see my body teeming, just like on Star Trek, teeming, or like a soft drink. I could see the teeming essence of my body coalescing together to form a duplicate of myself, which was my spirit body. I was used to that. Once I completely formed and realized that I had died but was still alive, there was a lapse of consciousness. You always want to watch out for that in dreams, in real life, or in an esoteric experience, because something may have happened between where you were and where you got to. So the scene changed. I was suddenly suspended in midair. Where's my book? Maybe I can get a picture. Suspended in midair. Yeah, here you go. There was a lapse of consciousness. I suddenly found myself floating in midair, suspended inside of a revolving huge ring. Remember those rings in the amusement park that you would get on and you would be attached to the wall, and when it spun around, the floor would drop down and you'd be sticking to the wall? Do you remember that, Haji? Okay. Well, anyway, I was in something like that. Here's a picture of it, really quick. Let's see. I was in that ring, and one side of it went around and around, while the other side went counterclockwise. I noticed that this ring, it was actually a room with no ceiling. Um, had three screens. On the screens that showed me everything I ever did, thought, or said. Um, and I accepted that as normal. And just like when shuffle a deck of cards, you can see the multi images at once. And similar to the three screens, I could see everything I thought, said, or did, even when I was by myself, the things I thought. So this was the life review room. Again, I was floating, everything I thought, said, or did. A voice came to me during it and asked me, what have you done to help yourself? What have you done to help others? And have you always believed in me? And when I said I had always believed in you, again, the scene changed. And that's whenever there's a change in dimensional space or location, there's also a change in your levels of consciousness. And that's something we'll talk about too, how you can get from here to there by changing your thought or changing your level of consciousness. It's easier to do it with a level of consciousness. But have you always believed in me? Yes, there was a change. Now, right before he asked me those questions, on the side of the life review, I could see out of my peripheral a son of God-like figure who was exhorting to God in my behalf that I should be allowed up into the higher realms. The first part of the near-death is generally kind of earth-based, with what you did, who you interacted with, how you dealt with them. Then the second half is generally of the higher level, going upward. It's always an upward striving to go. That's the human is naturally inclined to strive to a higher level of behavior, thought, or existence. And everyone, no matter they realize or not, is trying to get to God, to get back to the Creator, which has created them. The Son of God-like figure exerting in my behalf that I should be allowed into heaven. The life review went all right. I found myself on a beach, and that was a second lapse of consciousness. I suddenly awoke on a beach, just like in that movie Contact with Jodie Foster. And I've heard a lot of other near-deathers reporting that they regained consciousness on a beach or had a beach-like setting. That's pretty common. So I had mine in '74, 2 years before they even started near-death research, 2 years before anyone had heard of it. So life review, I'm on this beach. I see the sun coming up. And in those realms, like I said, you let things happen. There's not a lot of, you do have your own willpower, but there's not that urge to control stuff. During my near death, I saw a brown thick little cloud bouncing in front of me, and it had like a feeling and sentient thought. It was alive in some way, and I looked at it and watched it, and then it bounced away, and its feeling was sadness, and then it bounced away, and I just let it do what it will, and continued on. So I wake up on the beach. I see across the ocean the sun rising, and the sun was yellow, just like it would, like if you stayed all night and you saw it coming up. And as I watched it, I rose up into the air with it. As it got midway into the air, the yellow sun changed into a red sun. And now the yellow sun, the colors in those realms have feelings. The colors have feelings that affect you. In the near death, they affect you in super positive ways. But no matter what the experience, colors do have an effect on you, and they'll leave an after effect. So the yellow rays of the sun, just like the yellow in a lemon or any kind of fruit, gave me a cleaning, and they were yellow that changed into an orange. And in fact, the sun was, it started off as orange, then red. But they gave off rays of healing and health and vitality. This is where the person might be healed of something. one of the places where the person might be healed of something. But it restores you. It's like the vitamin C, so it's wholesome and healing. But when this sun sphere, and it was a sphere of consciousness, because I was interacting and interfacing with it, and as it changed colors, I rose up into the air with it, and I could feel the colors affecting me. Now, as the orange was healing, the red was of a super love uh, flavor. And if you can imagine like a red lotus flower slowly opening, or like your heart chakra thing slowly opening. And this was a more expansive feeling. And the love vibrations were like waves of undulating rapture. And it was orgasmic undulations to the extent where I had to watch it myself. I let it happen. I was fully watching it though, because anything in those realms that becomes too emotionally charged could be an illusion, a spiritual illusion, which you don't hear a lot of people talking about. And all of those things are interpenetrated with spiritual illusion, but with focused concentration uh, and those years of advanced meditation, you can pierce through the illusion. And once you do, it'll literally disappear. And the reality of what you're seeing or want to see or know will become known to you, or you'll be able to see it. So this red sun sphere, and it was actual sphere of consciousness that gave off red lights. Scientists know that information is transmitted through light, as well as energy and other things. So this one red light gave off waves of super ecstasy, like a paint shaker. And this is the nirvana and bliss levels that the mystic gurus and monks talk about and strive to get to. And oh, how they strive. And you can get to those levels. And once you get up to those levels, you're changed forever. You're like a different, higher version of yourself, a better, advanced version of. You're really the person that you should be and are becoming. So the red lights were of a loving God, and there's also forgiveness, where God forgives you before he judges you. He fully forgives you. That's how good he is. He gives you for what you've done against him and against others and against yourself. And it's only about love. But the love was so ecstatic that I had to fully watch it. And you don't want anything to be overcome with emotion, whether it be fear or ecstasy, two polar opposites. So I get through the waves, and they were like literally orgasmic waves, where a human could literally let themselves be carried away like that forever. But those waves stopped, and I was at this point, I was floating upward in spirit body form. Yet at one point, Haji, I looked down as I was floating upward. My body half physical, half spiritual, more spiritual than physical. But it was kind of like in the teeming phase. And I looked down, I could see the physical lake where I had just died. And I could see birds and stuff flying past me in spirit, half spirit body form. And this shows a dual consciousness where I was conscious also of the earth plane, but also conscious that I was had that spirit separation. And I marked off the degrees of spirit separation. There's about 5. But I looked down, there was that dual consciousness, the same dual consciousness that a person has when they're on the operating table. The anesthesia produces an out of body. They wake up a few feet near the ceiling. Within 8 to 22 seconds, they wake up, see the doctor down there sawing on them. They can feel it in their spiritual body in the air, and at the same time, they can also feel it in their physical body. And just like Carl Jung said, he believed in a division of consciousness, and there is a division of consciousness, and can be one, where you can be conscious in both your spirit body and your physical body at the same time. In the dream and out of body things will show that to the person too. So it's a interesting field of study. So as I was going up, I could had that division of consciousness where I was still going up while disintegrating, but was able to look back and see where I had just died. One last look. And I could even feel the wind against my spirit body. So I go up higher. The spirit body, as you go from level to level, gets finer and finer and finer until you're just like a pinpoint of thought at the highest level. Now for the white lights, the strongest and most powerful of all the spiritual lights, especially the near-death light. The scientists I work with said that only 1 in 10 get into the white lights, and only 1 in 4 remember the fullness of the near death. And there's some memory issues too. I'll go over them quickly right now since we have time before I forget. A lot of good info. I identified 7 memory issues associated with the near death, and they are lapses in consciousness, which we already talked about, problems with memory recall, problems with memory retention, how much you remember from the experience. The recall is how much you can recall it at will if you need be. Memory retrieval, that's an interesting one. Memory accuracy, we talked about the spiritual illusions where you're seeing something that's really not even there. And once you look into it intensely, especially if you want to know its essence or origin, if it's an illusion, it'll fade away. And you'll see the reality of what you're really looking for once that thing, once you pierce that final veil, that final illusionary veil. There's problems with memory accuracy, problems with memory suppression, problems with false memory, and that also, the false memory is in, and memory suppression is also in the UFO thing too. So when you see people talking about the near death, it's nice to remember or have these partial memories of what happened, but there's always a sub-reality in everything. And there's a deep sub-reality in the near death. Just like a person is having a dream, but the sub-reality, the reality behind the dream is that the person is asleep in bed. The sub-reality to an out-of-body is that the person is having a dream. So those were some of the memory issues. We get to the white lights, the strongest and most powerful. The white lights are responsible for the permanent after effects the person will have after the near death. And these after effects will get stronger every year, Haji. They'll increase in the person. Strong after effects with the near death. The white lights, their primary after effects, their primary effects are to elevate the person and to refine or cleanse the person. The person is spiritually purged and cleansed by the electromagnetic white radiation light, and that white light is so strong. It's soft, but you can't see anything when you go into it. If a person has taken an airplane flight and you go into a thick white cloud, it's just like that. But it's super bright, but it doesn't hurt your eyes. The white light, it elevates the person physically, spiritually, and every other way. And also it physically purifies the person, because you have to be super clean in like thought and body before you can even come close to meeting God or merging with him. The person, even though they are clean, they have to be super clean to get to that highest level where the angels go. And the angels are a little bit lower than us. It's their job to protect us. And supposedly everyone has 3. So I go into the white light. It cleanses and purges me. And it's the highest in refinement of the lights. The first one healed me. The second one, the ecstasy rapture. The third one, the full elevation. That's where you have the God consciousness, the universal consciousness. That's where you feel one with everything. You literally are. At one point, Haji, I stopped to listen to the world, the universe, and it had a heartbeat, and the heartbeat was in direct synchronization as my own. I saw that it was alive and that I was literally part of it. I was part of the wind. Um, that's an interesting thing. That high level and that same white light level can be attained through a dream, especially if you do those breathing exercises. The person won't get anywhere spiritually unless you do the deep breathing regularly, year after year, for decade after decade. You see some strong changes occur in just 30 days. So the white light purifies me and elevates me to a high level. And that's where people come back knowing stuff that they never knew before. Um, because I was working with 3 scientists. And so it's a tripped out thing, the after effects. And they do get stronger, where the person literally gets younger. They, like, I don't get sick anymore. There's a lot of super good benefits from that white light. But its primary purpose was to prepare the person and cleanse the person, elevate the person, to have that one-on-one union and merging with God, which is the mystic's dream. And it can be attained by people if they fully desire. If that's the only thing you want, you can get it. And the younger, the better. So it's time now I go out, and then there was a lapse of consciousness as I go into the light, and then another one as I come out of it, and then I wake up on a circular platform. And I'm sitting on the floor, and I'm wondering, why am I on the floor, sitting on the floor if I'm in heaven? And then I see some beings in the background. And as soon as I start to focus in on them, there's a being right in front of me. And I knew this being to be God. You can automatically tell. And as soon as he was in front of me and I noticed that he was in front of me, we began to spin. And just like in the near-death ring, the circle that I was in, one circle went one way and the other one went counterclockwise, which is super important. Just like that gyroscope that I woke up in. The little things in the near-death are super important. And the more you reflect on it year after year, the better. You want to kind of watch out for the person who had a near-death, and then 2 years later, they're talking about it. It takes time just to like get over the after effects, usually 5 to 7 years, according to PMH Atwater, the Female World Authority. And it took me about 7 years to get used to it. And I had a UFO sighting. You might have, it will increase your psychic abilities near death. It's so many things. But so I'm in this platform, it starts spinning. And this is where the merging with God, because I'm in spirit form. I was in solid spirit body form when the spinning begun. But as we began to coalesce, like a blender, I was in disintegrated or semi-spirit form, sparkling, teeming essence form. And we blended together. And I wanted to see the face of God fully. And I looked at him. And in that realm, the vision is different. When you look at something fully, you have telescopic and that 360-degree spherical consciousness. Where you look at something, you can ascertain its essence all at once. Here's a quick example. I woke up in a spontaneous out of body one night. It was snowing, just like it was in real life when I went to sleep minutes before. And I woke up in the air and I was floating. I was at the high school football field where we lived. I was floating about 7 feet off the ground. I saw some cars a block away that were going the same direction as I was. And I decided to race them. In out of body form, you might see lights or electricity and be attracted to them. I saw the lights, and in a playful mood, I started racing with them down the football field, and they were down a block down. As soon as I got to the end of the football field, I sensed something was in the bushes right there, and I stopped automatically because your spirit body automatically knows. Your subconscious mind is the conscious mind of your spirit body. And once those two minds begin to meet and communicate it back and forth, you can literally have anything you want in this world. So I automatically know that there was something in the bush. I stopped. And there was something living in the bush. And without thinking, because I wanted to know what it was, I jumped into it. Within a second, I had jumped into his spirit form and back into my own. And I saw that it was a scared little rabbit or skunk. And then I woke up. And that happened again with a squirrel. I jumped into his body, saw myself from his view, and then popped back into my body. After the person has out of bodies, you might begin to have spontaneous out of bodies later on in real life. You just suddenly pop out of your body. Like cross country runners have that, where they're running and suddenly they'll see themselves from 20 feet above for a brief second and then pop back into their bodies running. So I'm blending with this thing and I want to see what it is. If it's God, I want to fully see him. And he knocked me out. And I looked up again. I used my will to look up again. And once you focus in that realm, you can automatically know what you're looking at. So I looked at him again. There's a good ways that you can use your eyes and psychic abilities to do a lot of things. And I guess we could talk about that later too. So I looked at him this time with a determined will. And then he fully knocked me out. And I could see the form of God, but I couldn't look directly into his face. And I tried hard. And then I woke up after that. Underneath the water, something had pushed me up out of the muck, and I swam up to the top and choked out all this lake water, then crawled, Haji, up to the beach in full shock. And then I was in such shock. The only thing I could do was scrape the muck off of my shin. And I just sat there in full shock, and I buried it fully. Because I was only 14, that was the 70s, where you could barely talk about ghosts and stuff, let alone coming out your body and flying up in the sky. So I kept it to myself. And then 3 years later, they would start studying the near death. But that was the experience.